All set, Peter?
All set.
Thank you. Members of the editorial board are advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this board with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or the appearance of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts at the outset? All right, I see none. Welcome, everyone. We have more than a quorum, I would say. Good attendance today. Thanks for showing up in your small boxes. I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow or Thursday. We have I think a pretty full agenda and a number of interesting articles teed up. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jennifer so we can go through our agenda.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks everybody for being here this afternoon. I'm rather sad that I don't get to see all of you in person. Mark, you're going to be leaving our committee and I never got to meet with you in person. So this is sad, but thank you for showing up here this afternoon and for your time always that you dedicate to this committee in between our meetings. I know there's a lot of effort that goes in between. So anyway, let's jump right into our winter edition. I've laid everything out here for you as far as what I am currently planning on publishing. Depending on the length of the journal, all of this material should fit. Do any of you have any questions about what is being published in this edition? Okay. If not, then I'm just going to let you, I'm sure you've read the other approved articles, and I'm going to jump right into the rest of the agenda because we actually didn't get to cover any of it at our last meeting. So I'd like to make sure we get through it and then have time at the end to do some brainstorming. So let's get right into it with Andrea, with Justice McGee and the opinion on the LGBT case. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have not spoken with her yet because tomorrow she's going to be at the dinner tomorrow night, receiving an award, and I'll be sitting with her at the table. So it'd be a perfect time for me to talk to her and get a little more detail on that. Okay. And so I can, I guess we're waiting for this case to be resolved. I don't know if it is yet. So I don't know if it's time sensitive, but if it is resolved, I can send an email to everybody, just maybe just giving you an update on our conversation. If it's not resolved, then we could probably wait till next meeting.
Okay, great. All right, thanks for the update, Andrea. All right, Camille, the Regulating Change Committee.
So I think Mark probably can speak more about an official article from the committee. I talked to Cornoodle and Alicia, who were going to write the article about licensed paraprofessionals, but that one wouldn't be until the committee was ready. So I just told them this week, it's not timely yet.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I think that's right. Just to add to what Camille said, I think really out of the regulatory change, I see, two, potentially three topics that could result in articles. So we have the paralegal, paraprofessional licensure, which the recommendation has been made to set up an ad hoc committee. We don't have a committee yet. We're still trying to figure out how that gets structured. But I think once a committee is up and rolling, I think an article talking about the work that committee's doing and what paraprofessional licensure might look like as a way to generate discussion and input while that committee works, I think would be good. A second topic that we will be recommending to consider moving forward on, I think, is the idea of a regulatory sandbox. I don't think we're actually going to be making formal requests for action until the January meeting on that, because we have some more work to do and we're tracking some legislation. But if there's a recommendation to have a committee looking at a regulatory sandbox, I could foresee that being an article. And again, that's more, that might be timely for a spring or summer edition. Finally, and I don't know how newsworthy this would be, but we can talk about it. The Regulatory Change Committee is wrapping up its work and will have a report that covers not just those two items, but a report on the various other things we looked at, other regulatory reform, and our assessment of it. And that report, or an edited version of that report, might also be something that's ultimately something we could consider putting in the journal. And that report is still several months, I think, away. Brian is working on a first draft. We're trying, we got a number of balls in the air. So I think that, that probably, I don't know if we'll have that report by the end of the year or not. So I could see 3 articles, certainly 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3, but all probably, a little bit down the road.
Great. What is a regulatory sandbox?
It's a fun place to play. You get toys and the idea.
Ice cream and naps.
It's a great question. I think we could come up with a fun headline. So the idea is that you allow certain organizations to propose to engage in conduct that would otherwise violate the rules. So we have a rule against non-lawyer ownership of law firms, you can't have it be an owner in a legal firm. You could say, we're gonna ignore that rule and we're gonna let Walmart own this law firm in North Carolina and do certain things. Or more limited example, we're gonna allow a paralegal or the wife of a lawyer to own the law firm. You would apply for an exception to set up that under the context of a sandbox where you would have to get approval ahead of time and then they would monitor it. I think the most interesting ones are changes that would be things that would violate our rules, but might be an innovative way to do services. So in some other places, they're proposing limited use of non-lawyers to handle certain things and saying they can do it with lawyer supervision, get non-lawyers to do some tasks that might constitute the practice of law, but in a sandbox, you allow it, and then you say, we're going to monitor it and see if there's improvement. A couple other states have done it and are tracking it. And you can look at like the 20 different, we got a lengthy report on like 20 different things that those states are looking at and whether they've been effective or not. So the idea is we could explore setting that up here. It's something you need legislative approval for, so it would require a law. One of the reasons we're kind of interested in it is right now the General Assembly's considering a financial regulatory sandbox where banks and other financial institutions could potentially set up programs that don't comply with all the normal bank regulations as a way to experiment with new financing or cryptocurrency or other stuff. And so there seems to be some appetite right now legislatively in doing, let's set up an area where regulatory restrictions can be lessened and monitor it and see if we can come up with innovation. So that would be the idea. And again, we haven't decided it's even necessarily a good idea. I think at this point, we're suggesting maybe a committee be set up to do the study and think about what it would actually look like, who's going to implement it. It takes a lot of work and time to figure out who's going to actually supervise the programs and check on them and approve them. I think we'd have to partner, and the Duke Center for Law and Technologies agreed to potentially be a partner if we decide to move forward, but we would need to partner with somebody that could do a lot of the legwork. We don't have the manpower at the state bar to do it. So, and that's kind of a long answer. So I'm sorry. I know I got a lot of other people like.
I'm glad I asked you. You're going, right. Well, I don't know.
We got Alice and Catherine and other folks equally involved on the in this group. So I hope I'm not repeating myself. But that's what we're thinking about as a potential option.
Okay. Wow. I mean, hearing that explanation, I just see so much potential for a lot of content in the journal, because it seems like there are a lot of moving pieces with all of that and different potential and talking about what other states have done. So it sounds fascinating to me. So thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
And I think there'll be so much of it that a lot of people won't have heard of, that I think it's not a one article kind of thing, but it'll be a long, slow drip of information. So
Okay.
that's kind of what I hope that we could see, over the next period of time.
Okay. So good. So maybe late 2022 into 23, we would have maybe some content in a couple of editions that would revolve around that topic. I love having content in the pipeline. So that's great. Good, good, good. All right, Camille, the group of paralegals, the Justice for All program.
Yeah, so that's the one. It's really not, that one won't be ready until the state bar has made a decision through that regulatory study committee about how they're going to present things, because the limited licensing piece would be a piece of that perhaps. And so I would want the order, I would suggest the order would be kind of the official state bar committee report, then these other, pieces that talk about sandbox, limited license professionals, etc.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and keep that on the agenda just so that we're top of mind and thinking about it. All right. Thanks, Camille. Appreciate all your work always. Darren, you're up next with Matt Davenport.
Matt's is involved with writing his second book. So I kind of was worried when I made that suggestion that he was going to get too involved in that. So, you can take him off the list right now.
Okay. No problem. Maybe we'll have a book review coming out at some point. All right. Then we're up to Gray.
I had an extended conference yesterday with the board of the North Carolina Supreme Court Historical Society, and I have presented them with a written proposal along with documents from 5 other states that have judicial learning centers. They all thought it was a great idea. They thought it would be a wonderful addition to our state, help educate the judiciary about the public about the judiciary and about our profession. And they didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They said they were too small, they didn't have any money, and it looked like it would take a lot of work. Judge Rader, however, was in that call, and he agreed to work with me. I basically told him, okay, I'm finished here, but I need bodies. And he volunteered to help because he's twiddling his thumbs now a little bit. And so, I've got at least one co-conspirator to help me pursue this further. It was interesting that the society's board suggested that this sounded like a great project for the state bar, especially if we could land it on the same city block where our new building, relatively new building, is located. So I've done a good bit of work on that up to this point. I will tell you that the justices on the Supreme Court are very supportive of this initiative. But there were some other things kicked around. They said, well, why don't we just, soup up that, if you've seen it in the Supreme Court building, in the Ruffin building, that history room they have, which will hold about 1.5 people. And the other suggestion was to have an exhibit for some limited period of time in the North Carolina Museum, I think. And I told them that really wasn't the kind of scope that I was looking for, that, I was contemplating busloads of children, going over to this freestanding interactive learning center on a regular basis, as is the case in many of these other states. And so that's where that is right now. And so I'll be down later this week to the state bar, and I'll probably talk to some people down there about that, some of whom are on this call, Alice, and we'll go from there. But right now, it's dead on arrival. And before anybody thinks it was my idea to go to the society, it was actually the idea of a couple of the justices on the Supreme Court that was the place to go. So that just didn't pan out. And I understand their concerns. They were terrified at the thought of having to have a treasurer to account for the kind of money that would be involved in that. I explained to them that wasn't the plan anyhow. It's going to require, some separate funding. It's going to require donations. It may even require a private fundraising group. And I have worked with some of them before, but I'd mapped out the actually the square footage, what I thought the cost would be. And so I think, it's a project that may or may not ever get off the ground, but I think more investigation of that is indicated. And anybody in this august body that would like to contribute in that regard, that is not money, but just assistance, that would be appreciated. I need bodies in Raleigh more than anything else. So I'll be trolling for them later this week.
Good. Is Peter still on our call? Or has he?
Yep, I'm still here.
Peter, I got a text from Heidi. Oh, did she get in? She was trying to get in.
I don't see Heidi.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye on the participants list.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gray, what about these cases pending with the child sex abuse cases?
Well, it's frankly just I think too sensitive right now for me to write anything about it. At last check, I see 25 or more cases. I know have been shipped down to 3 judge panels. There is one in the appellate court. And I checked the other day, of all of the cases that have been filed to date, half of those are being defended by this office here in Winston-Salem. So I don't think I can have anything to do with that right now. And it's a very, sensitive subject because, we're talking about people 50, 60 years old who have come out of the closet now to make these claims. And, all of the records, all of the witnesses, adult witnesses at that time who might have some information about it, they're gone or dead. So there's some real challenges here from a constitutional standpoint. And these things are just going to have to work their way through the courts at some point. But I'm not comfortable now authoring any kind of article in that regard.
Okay. Is this something I should remove from the schedule? And if at some point in time it works, you'll submit something?
I would for the time being. I can tell you, after one of them was filed and I refused to comment on page 1 of the local cheese rag, the next day I get an email from somebody telling me that Satan will drive a stake through my heart. So, I just think, I don't need to wear the brown helmet on this, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, then one last shot at John Grisham, and then I'm probably going to take that off of the agenda as well. Is anything happening with that?
Well,
No.
I read the book. If that's the question. Yeah.
I think we've got plenty of book reviews, and I don't think he really needs the press in our little publication. So we will just take that off, and we will be moving on. I don't see Heidi still. So I'm going to assume she's not here, and I'm going to move on to Julie, who is not here, which leaves us with Margaret and our article.
Julie's here.
I'm here.
Judge Bell's here.
Oh, Julie, you're not on my screen.
I'm not on camera, but I'm here.
Oh. Sometimes there's a box that'll have your name in it, and then I at least know you're here. So I'm sorry. Well, glad you joined us. I know your schedule is so challenging.
I've been on from the beginning of the meeting.
Excellent. Well, welcome officially now that I know you're here. I have you down for a potential article about the lack of formality in court as far as dress and how lawyers address each other and that respect.
Right. And I started working on it. And what I discovered is I need some more opinions besides mine. And so I am going to interview several of my colleagues and put it together. And I would anticipate having a draft by the end of November.
Wow, fantastic. How's the process? Are you enjoying it?
Yes, in terms of presiding, is that what you're asking me?
Writing.
No, writing is fine. Writing is fine.
Great. Awesome. All right. Thanks for your
Andrea, you had your hand up.
I did. I thought that this might be a good topic to combine with maybe a podcast? What do you think about that, since we're trying to find those overlapping interests?
I mean, I think it's all right in terms of a podcast. I just think it might be hard in terms of timing. It's hard to get a couple of minutes. I work in the courthouse with the judges, and it's hard to get a few minutes when we're not in court to chat, let alone do a podcast. But I mean, I'm certainly open to it. I just think it might be challenging scheduling.
What about like a retired judge?
I think that's an excellent idea.
It's one of those things where I guess we would be waiting for the article to be done first, but we can maybe revisit it if everybody thinks that it might be a good topic for a podcast.
I certainly don't think it's an issue that is going to be going away anytime soon. So if we got the article and Julie had a list of folks that she spoke to, interviewed, Mark, I don't know how you do your podcast. Does it have to be an in-studio type thing, or do you do it over the phone? If we had like 5 people that would be willing to sit
all
down
on Zoom.
Yeah, we use Zoom. We've used Zoom lately, Jennifer. We used to do it in person, but with COVID, we've now done it primarily virtual and Zoom, and Peter can record it on Zoom, and I can do it from here. Everyone can do it from their computer, so there's no need to physically gather. So, you know, we could do it with any number of people that are interested too. In my experience, it's good to have at least 2 people in addition to me as a host, just because you get more interplay and discussion. But I think if we could do the article and then find a couple, 2 or 3 folks, current or retired judges that you want to do it. The other thing is I find short podcasts are often the most interesting because it's less of a time commitment. So we could literally take 30 minutes, set it up, jump on a Zoom. The article would be fresh, people would have worked on it. I can put together some questions stemming from the article and we can just have a dialogue about it. So it doesn't have to be potentially a big time commitment. We can get the whole thing done and, be in and out in 30 minutes of a Zoom in the time less than the time we're doing today's meeting.
Yeah.
Why don't I talk to the people who I'm interviewing and see if they're open, not only to giving me their thoughts for the article, but also to being on a podcast so that I can report that back as well.
Great idea.
Yeah, and I would also suggest having at least 1 or 2 attorneys. The reason why I even brought this up is because, when I'm in court, especially being in a small town, it's something that crosses my mind and I don't know like how formal I should be sometimes. So maybe getting a little perspective from, just maybe 1 or 2 attorneys would be a nice balance too.
Absolutely. Glad to do that.
Yeah. I like this idea. Thanks, Andrea. And unlike the Gita Kapoor interview where the journal article was sort of a transcription of the interview, we would have the article talking about the issue, and then the podcast would just be a riffing dialogue that, just plays on the same topic, but it's completely different material. So excellent. Great. That's exciting. Okay, back to Margaret. Gerrymandering.
Yes, here I am, and I apologize for being late. I got caught with something else, but thank you for letting me in. You didn't punish me for being late.
Always welcome.
Mary Wills Bodie is happy to write that article, and I think actually I probably should have nudged her earlier, but it's probably good that I didn't, because by the time we publish something, the redistricting will probably have been completed. And so I think this article will be a look ahead, because there will certainly be litigation no matter how the districts turn out, because there always is. So I think it would be perhaps a more interesting article after the redistricting is done, and with a look toward the next decade of how it might, it could unfold.
Okay. When is the redistricting supposed to be completed?
Well, there is a drop dead date, and I don't know that. It's a court imposed date, I believe. And but as I understand it, the legislature's trying its darndest to go ahead to get a budget, and there's been some level of agreement between the governor and the legislative leadership. So I think that's going to move forward, and redistricting is the next thing up.
Okay.
So soon, it'll be soon.
Wonderful.
We hope.
Excellent. Thanks, Margaret. I appreciate it. All right, Mark, you're up again. The School of Government.
Not sure that's going to be a great topic, so I think we can probably take that one off the list.
Okay.
I guess I'm worried that I'm not sure how interesting a pure history thing is, and I worry we might get more political if we start talking about more recent events. So I'm not, unless someone feels strongly about it. That was I added it on the list, but I think we have more interesting things to cover, so I'd suggest taking it off.
No article, no podcast. Oh, well. We have to get their entertainment elsewhere. All right, moving on to Stephen. The Moonshiners article.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to get up with John Gehring, but let's leave that on the list for now, Jennifer, and let me try to still get a hold of him.
Okay. What about the Diversity Committee?
I suppose Todd's going to be pretty busy this week, but I'll try to have a word with him about trying to put something together, figure out an angle and what we might want to say or where we're at, and on not only the committee that Todd is chairing, but the committee, the subcommittee I'm chairing in ethics is still chugging along. So there may be something we can put together about the challenges in that area.
Any idea what the timeline is for this committee? Is this something that's going to just be ongoing? Is this they've got a goal that they're trying to get to and then they'll wrap up the work? Anyone have an idea about that?
I can speak to my subcommittee, and we're still have a few brainstorming sessions to work through, so we don't have any drop dead date to report back to the full ethics committee. I think Todd would probably have similar thoughts on where his committee's at. So
okay,
if we did have something for, say, spring of next year or summer, it would still likely be midstream.
Okay, gotcha. All right, excellent. All right, well, we made it through our agenda this quarter, so big pat on the back to us. And now we have got some free time left. If anybody has some thoughts, some ideas, some topics that they would like to brainstorm with the committee so we can get some folks working on them. Who wants to go for it? Don't all raise your hand at one time. It's overwhelming.
I'll go first, Jennifer.
Okay.
We're sort of interested in book reviews, and I have a friend who is a well-known author in North Carolina, sort of an author's author, but taught at UNCG and has relocated to Austin. But he's got in pre-publication a novel that's pretty interesting. It has to do with a murder and then kind of a Rip Van Winkle aspect. Several decades go by and the person's released from prison, and it deals with maybe several sensitive adult subjects, and so there may be some controversy around that, but there are portrayals of some very interesting lawyer characters in there, and I think that would make an interesting book review. But his name is Michael Parker. And I read an early manuscript, and he's agreed to do an interview / we could do a review.
Okay.
That probably would be published summer of next year, fall of next year.
Okay. Anyone else? I see so many eyes just averting their cameras. Like maybe if I don't look, she won't call on me. It's like second grade geography class or something. Like, don't look at the teacher. She'll call me up to the blackboard. All right, guys. It sounds like you are.
I've got one more. Let me give you one more, Jennifer.
Okay, Steve.
We'll probably, we did an article, I guess close to a year ago now, or 3 quarters ago, on housing, and now the housing moratoriums are over. The floodgates have kind of opened. There are innovative projects in Mecklenburg County, and there's just about one just about to be kicked off here in Guilford County, where, you know, one of the challenges is getting the money that's available from the federal government, pipeline down to state governments, to tenants in courthouses. And so they've set up the one in Mecklenburg, and the one is just now launching in Greensboro. So I know we could get some something put together on that. It's kind of innovative because, one of the interesting ethical questions, how do you work around the solicitation rules? And I've asked questions about that. I'm not sure I've gotten all the answers, but that cat needs to be skinned. And then the other part of this is there's money, there's landlords who it's owed to, there's tenants who need to stay in their houses, and all these people are together. And then there are, in Greensboro, I think 5 different organizations that are helping to funnel the money. There's potentially a mediator available. It's kind of a holistic approach at the courthouse door to address a very real legal problem that I think could something we could put together and try to take a stab at.
Okay, great. That sounds really interesting. Yeah. All right,
Jennifer?
oops, I saw Andrea had her hand up real quick.
Oh, Margaret, I just had an idea. I was texting you about getting in the meeting, and I saw some old text that you and I had regarding the art collection. It occurred to me that many attorneys across the state may never set foot in the State Bar building. They just never have that opportunity for whatever reason. And that if we could, the collection is big enough that we could spotlight one piece each edition, excuse me, for a long time to come. And it wouldn't be difficult. It would be just taking a picture of whatever the spotlight piece is and telling its name and a little bit about the artist. And I just think people would find that interesting. It's not controversial, it's not challenging, but I just think it's such a lovely collection. And I think the State Bar should be very proud of it and to share it with people who may never actually see it.
Okay. That's a good point. We published a book.
Right.
The art collection. So we have the artist bios and little snippets about each of the pieces of work, all, ready to go. And so that might be a good little like page filler here and there to have some interest.
Yes. And, it just is something lovely to look at. You don't have to read a whole lot of text to go with it.
Exactly. Good point. Okay. Excellent. Good. And then Andrea?
Yeah, so I wanted to just point out that the state and the counties in North Carolina are really close to finalizing the opioid settlement. It's not quite finalized yet, but we might want to get it on our radar and maybe try to get an article explaining the settlement, and maybe ask somebody from the from Josh Stein's office, since they're kind of orchestrating it. I don't know who to ask, but I just thought, maybe someone there might be capable and have the time to do it.
Okay. Good. Does anybody have a contact, a communications person or a marketing or anything on Josh's staff, any kind of contact with them?
I don't personally, but I could, like our county is involved in it. And so I see a lot of emails flying back and forth, but I could just see who from his office is participating in these emails and then maybe like use that as a lead.
Yeah, because certainly they're going to be putting out press about that. But we would maybe be looking for something that has a little more meat to it than like a basic press release that would be just going out over the wire.
Yeah, maybe something written more for attorneys.
Yeah, exactly.
Comparing it to the tobacco settlement or something.
There you go. And there's got to be a lot of background context that maybe wouldn't go into a press release. So yeah, okay, great. Very good. All right, anyone else? Okay. Well, I thank you all so much for your time this afternoon and for all of the time you dedicate to reading our submissions and sending me feedback. I appreciate it. And again, I'm sorry I'm not going to be seeing you again this quarter, but fingers crossed for January. We'll see what comes next with all of this. All right.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe and have a great